relationship not working out. And he's like, well, she still has my favorite hoodie. And I was like, oh, yeah.
That's always hard.
She might be keeping that one.
Sometimes you just gotta, let it go. You just have to just, I'm not going to get that back.
Yeah, not going to get it back. I don't know what's going on right now. Unfortunately, it's never happened to us before in the 5-month history of the show.
So I can report right now we are back live on YouTube. Took a little bit of wrangling to get that back up. Our guests are ready to keep going. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, great.
Yep.
So we're back. Good stuff. Ish, in a way. Fellas, I don't know what the hell. We've done 110 episodes of the show, and this has not happened before, so my apologies for this, but we're going to make sure that this interview is blasted out all over the place, and we'll make it up to you, but we know our audience will slowly come back, I think, to us on YouTube. This is me. What happens, I just start running my mouth when internally my brain is going, what the fuck is going on right now? We're hanging out with Kevin Smokler and Christopher Boone, the filmmakers behind Vinyl Nation. So ultimately out of this, I mean, I think the resurgence of vinyls is, I think it's amazing culturally. What impact do you see it having on the business of music? I mean, who has the biggest opportunities here? I would imagine you could approach this from a number of different angles.
Well, honestly, independent labels and indie artists have been pressing vinyl even during like the low point of vinyl. So they're actually they, along with DJs, really deserve the credit for keeping vinyl records alive and keeping enough pressing plants around so that when the resurgence started to happen, there was at least still the opportunity to press vinyl. But the major labels were the ones that really jumped in when record stores realized they were struggling and they needed something special to stay alive. And Record Store Day essentially was launched in 2008. And the major labels are the ones that really push everything into high gear. I mean, who stands to benefit? Honestly, everyone. And we actually went to 4 different pressing plants in our film because they each have their own stories, because there are opportunities to be had in making records. Because once the resurgence happened, there weren't enough pressing plants around to actually meet the demand, and there were too many bottlenecks in the process. So we went to Gold Rush Vinyl in Austin, Texas, which was launched by an entrepreneur, Karen Kelleher, who worked both at Google in their music division, but also as a manager for bands, and just realized there was an opportunity there, and got financing for it from her local bank, and now again runs a pressing plant. We also went to Third Man Pressing, Jack White's gorgeous plant in Detroit, because he's very particular about everything vinyl, and realized, he wanted to have even more control over it. But again, there was yet an opportunity there. And in addition to pressing all of his records, they support a lot of local artists as well, especially a lot of Detroit bands, where he grew up. And I think it's really important that these pressing plants have come back online, because it is giving opportunities to, that band that just wants to press a 7-inch, so you can buy it at the merch table the next time they get to play a gig when we are able to play live events again. But in the meantime, you can hopefully pick up their albums on, Bandcamp after they've been able to get through that backlog of all those major label releases. So I think there are opportunities really across the board for all different types of artists and all different types of businesses.
I'm curious to see how people, how consumers are going to see their habits evolve. I mean, I'm a classic example, okay? So I've got, my parents, way back in the day, gave me some of the classic records. So I've got all these, I've got, stuff from Elvis all the way through to Boston and Kenny Rogers, and all these random, but they're legit old. They're awesome. And then a whole bunch of new ones, cool ones, a special press from The Weeknd, or I've got the Gord Downie record that I really love, or some Tom Petty. Anyway, whatever. Now I just want to talk about bands I love. So I picked up this record player it's really not great. It's one of those ones that you just plug and play, and it has a little crappy speaker on the side. It actually, I'm so embarrassed, it has a USB port. I can actually plug my iPhone. It's not like a real record player. You know what I mean? Meantime, my neighbor Chad has half of the main floor of his house is set up. He says to me, I shouldn't even say this, but I said to Chad, I was like, can you give me a ballpark on what putting a room together with? He goes, well, I'll give you an idea. He says there's about $4,000 worth of cable. And I went, Okay. Like, what? I mean, you know what I mean? And so, but then I'm thinking the next time that I purchase a whole new stereo system, which is in someone's life like once every 20 to 25 years, there's no doubt I'll invest in a turntable. There's no doubt because I've got the collection I'm building, right? I mean, this is just one example of how I think the resurgence and probably docs like yours are going to, I think, spur people on to where this could be a curve over the next, whatever, 10 to 20 to whenever years, right?
Absolutely. I mean, vinyl is on its, surge started in 2008, Chris. So doing the math, because you're better at this than me, we're on the 13th consecutive year of double-digit growth for vinyl, and with no signs of stopping. In fact, the growth of vinyl purchasing has been bigger during a pandemic when no one could go to a record store than it was the year before. So the hobby and the passion for it seems incredibly resilient to waverings in the marketplace and in fashion and in of course giant tragedies like the global pandemic. It will be very interesting to see how we want to spend our time now that things are opening up and we can go back to record stores and see live music again. I know with Record Store Day coming up on June 12th, people are dying to go to their local record store. We've been hearing a ton from record stores all over North America that says we've been getting phone calls and communications from our people forever who are like, I just missed you guys. Like, we can't wait to come and visit. We hope there's something left on the shelves after June 12th because Record Store Day is happening again. They're doing 2 drops this year. Record Store Day is happening again on July 17th. Chris, I'm pretty convinced if we went to a record store on June 13th, the pickings would be very slim because people are very eager to participate in the culture of buying vinyl again and supporting artists they love and just participating in really the tangible identifiers of being a music fan. We like to say that, like, we interviewed 40 people for this movie, and not one of them said the great thing about listening to records is being able to press 3 clicks on your laptop and have Amazon send you any vinyl record you want. Nobody said that. Everybody likes the communal aspect of buying records, finding records, learning about records. It's like being in music college forever. And thankfully, because vinyl is something you can buy used a lot easier than you can buy CDs or cassettes or other things used. There's no such thing as a used MP3, obviously, but vinyl college is still relatively cheap if you can do the used thing.
People are, I mean, our live chat right now is so great. Starlight Sessions, which I'm pretty sure is tied to Starlight Room, which is a legendary Edmonton music venue. It's one of my favorite places to be. I can't wait to have somebody spill beer all over me and then not even apologize when the Starlight Room.
Man.
Bring it on. I don't care at all. We're going to be doing selfies and I don't even care at all. Starlight Sessions says fans are buying a lot more hard copy music now directly from developing artists. Money goes straight into the artist's hands and it doesn't get tied up through multiple parties, which I think is a great point as well. And then a bunch of people are just writing in about their own experiences. Heidi, I feel like I have to translate code here. You guys can do it for me because I don't even know what this means. But Heidi says she has several black records passed down from her mom from the Compo company out of Lachine, probably Lachine, Quebec. Says you can't even.
Wow.
It says you can't even play. Do you know what she's talking about? Says you can't even play them on a modern turntable. She says the other day we tracked down a couple refurbished gramophones, and they're very excited. That is old school.
It's really cool. Vinyl is this tangible reminder because the technology was invented long ago and there were several iterations of how to listen to music since then. Vinyl is this tangible reminder of the past, present, and now future of music. And so, yeah, we hear from a lot of people who are like, I have my great-grandfather or great-grandmother's 78 records. What am I supposed to do with them? I have 45s. I have a vinyl flexi disc that was once on the back of a cereal box. I have a dozen of those. Like, we have, Chris, we have a ton of great stories of vinyl being unearthed and dusted off for the citizens of Vinyl Nation to treasure.
Yeah, and it sounds like that person may even have not even vinyl. It sounds like they probably have shellac, essentially, which for those of you who don't know is made from bugs. So it's not even plastic, and that's why you can break it. That's why we have the Donna Reed moment, and from It's a Wonderful Life, smashing the record. So luckily, vinyl, yes, you can break it, but it's a little bit sturdier than shellac. So take really good care of that stuff. But I can't wait for you to get to that gramophone so you can actually listen to those records.
Are you hang on a second? The original records were made out of pressed bugs, like insects?
Yeah, shellac is made from bugs.
So, wow.
Yeah, shellac is not only made from bugs, but because of Pearl Harbor and the advent of World War II, most of the shellac used in the pressing of shellac records in America came from Japan and from East Asia. And with the advent of World War II, that pipeline stopped, and that led to the invention of the plastic that vinyl is made of. Also, another of our favorite trivia tidbits about this. Shellac is the reason that albums are called albums, because shellac used to be so big and thick that in order to listen to 3 or 4 movements of a symphony or something, you needed about 10 of them, and they came wrapped in a giant binder that looked like a photo album. And so that's why the earliest collections of flat things that music were placed on were called albums.
Very cool stuff. Hope Springs on our live chat says, my hubby's an audiophile. He's got tons of vinyl, big Maggie speakers, preamps, record cleaning machine. She says it's so tactile. There is intention involved. And then she simply says, it worked on me. I don't know what that means. And then there's an interesting comment from Scott, which is a great point. And Scott says, I do find it interesting that vinyl is the only medium to have come back from the dead. CDs will not make a comeback. Does this bring the conversation full circle? Is this back to the 4 out of 5 census thing? Is that why? Do you think?
I definitely think so. I think, I don't think it's a coincidence that vinyl records start their resurgence at the same time the iPhone is introduced. So now you have this device that you don't need the iPod in your pocket anymore and it's separate from your phone. Like, oh, it's so convenient. Everything was about convenience, ease of access, all your music with you all the time. And again, like I said, I was becoming disconnected with my music. And I think a lot of people from our generation and even younger, like I said, with my daughter, they never had that tactile relationship with the music. And albums are just these big, beautiful objects of art that you can take a look at. You pull the record out of the sleeve. It's a ritual. You put it down on the turntable, you drop the needle, you hear the crackle, and you're going to spend time with that music, with that artist, with that band. And you have to pay attention because you're going to have to flip the record over. So it's not necessarily something you can just put on and just completely forget about. Definitely not for hours or hours unless you want to wreck your needle. So, it's something that you're going to do with intention. I put on records when I'm making dinner, and I joke that I pay way more attention to the record than I do to the stovetop. So I'm not the best cook, but I'm pretty good at, managing the playlist on the turntable. And I think that ritual is what is bringing people back. And it is really cool to go into somebody's home and they have their record collection, and you can just learn a lot about somebody from the records that are in their collection, as long as they're okay with you looking at them. And if you own records, usually you're pretty much okay with somebody flipping through your stack, and hopefully they discover something that they've never seen before. And they say, hey, can we put this on? And hopefully you're cool enough to let them handle the record themselves and put it on the turntable. And if they don't know how to do it, you get to show them, and then you can really freak them out and say, wait, I'm not even going to turn on the receiver. And you drop the needle and they can still hear the music coming out of the record.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Right.
And it's like, this technology is really, really old, and I couldn't put it into the phone, but I hope you're appreciating it right now. So yeah, I think for all these reasons, it's just something that's cool. And again, both young and old, all generations, all different types of people are really finding that connection with vinyl records. Yeah.
Our little guy on the lousy record player I'm telling you about, it's nothing to brag about, but even our little guy, I've got a video of him I'll keep for the rest of my life. He's like a year and a half, and he put on Bob Seger, and he's just on the chair, and he's just, and I had to release myself because he's doing the equivalent, like somebody like learning to scratch for the first time. He's like an 18-month-old, and I'm just like, release myself of the pressure. The joy he was experiencing at full volume was so wonderful. I love this. Like Helen writes in and says, I have some old school, she says literally school record players with little shocks and springs on the feet so that the record doesn't skip during the social dance. I mean, this is so great. People are all writing in. By the way, I'm glad I had a chance to clarify. Starlight Sessions has chimed back in. They say, yes, this is our digital venue on YouTube, birthed from the legendary Starlight Room. So there you have it. Subscribe to Starlight Sessions.
How cool, man.
Isn't that great? And fellas, let me ask you this in close. We so respect your time. We're going to. I know you've got stuff to do today, but Jeanette. I mean, here's a good one because obviously now you guys are the definitive voice of Vinyl Nation. Jeanette wonders.
That was our.
Yeah, that was your goal the whole time.
That was the idea. Yeah.
She says, well, what? And I guess we could probably talk about budget and all these types of things. But she says, what record player would you recommend to get someone started? Says my daughter has asked for one for her birthday. You guys could answer this a million different ways.
I'll jump in, and then Kevin, I want you to chime in just because I have a teenage daughter. So if you don't want to spend a ton of money, don't let the naysayers scare you away from Crossley Cruisers. I know there are a bunch of people who are audiophiles cringing right now, but you know what? They come with built-in speakers. They're not that expensive, and they're super fashionable, and you can get them in a variety of different colors and styles, and it will not break the bank. And they also all come with connectors in the back. So you can plug in better speakers if you don't want to listen to it through those speakers. And that's how my daughter started. She had a Crossley Cruiser turntable. And then this past year, I was like, you need an upgrade. And so I got her a Project Audio turntable, which is also really easy to use. It had a built-in preamp. And that's the thing is a lot of people don't realize like, oh, you're going to need to plug this into a receiver that can handle a phono connection, or it needs to have a built-in preamp as well. And Project Audio, you can get some really good turntables for not a lot of money, but if you want to spend just a little bit more than you would spend on like a Crossley, that has been good for me. Kevin, if you want to talk about if you really just want to splurge or just like go all in, like what they should do.
I'm just going to say, like, I don't have a particular model to advocate. I will say if you have a local audio gear shop, patronize them. Yeah. And if the local audio gear shop is staffed by some dude with a bad mustache and nicotine on his finger, that's fine. But if he's a jerk to you, shame him publicly and let the rest of us know, because nobody who is eager to involve themselves in vinyl and vinyl culture and share a deep love of music with themselves and their family and friends deserves that. Also, I think we would say it's important that that you take into account where this record player is going. If this record player is going to be in your daughter's bedroom, that's one thing, because I'm guessing that's got a smaller footprint than if it's going to be in the living room and part of family listening. So the interesting thing, one of our favorite things about records and vinyl is records and vinyl create a sense of space and a sense of home. So where something goes is important to what you buy. And finally, we have been told, not only we have learned it through the course of being at Northwest Fest, not only about the Starlight Room and about venues all over Alberta and record stores in both Calgary and Edmonton and a bunch of other cities. Now, we have not been to these places, but we now have a wildly inflated set of expectations about what's going to go on in Alberta. In terms of Alberta vinyl culture, and we are eager to experience it firsthand. Chris and I don't live in the same place, but I'm volunteering him for this mission too.
Well, I think we could, I think we could probably cook up some sort of an event or some sort of reason for us to all get together and enjoy some great music. And the band that plays the title track for this show, they're called Ayla Brooke and the Soundmen. The album Desolation Sounds on Fallen Tree Records. The drummer, Chris Sturwald's watching, and he says, I'd love to tell the story of us pressing our album onto vinyl. And I know that we've got DJs, including Yuri Wench, and I ran into DJ Junior Brown yesterday downtown Edmonton. He can't wait to get things going again at the Chameleon at Bauer, which is one of my favorite places to hang out. So let me just say, we have a community. We're going to be releasing a Real Talk beer in the next few months. So I don't know if we're going to do some sort of. I can't believe I just dropped that publicly. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you who's brewing it yet. Maybe we do some sort of a keg party. I don't know. I think that the options are endless here, fellas. But I'm not BSing you. I'm serious. I would love to put something like this together sometime soon. In the meantime, Watch this hard segue. People can check out Vinyl Nation right now on demand by checking out northwestfest.ca. Kicks off today, running online on demand through till May 16th. The filmmakers Kevin Smokler, Christopher Boone. We could have talked for 3 more hours. This audience right now is going to just absolutely annihilate me for cutting this conversation short. Everybody's having so much fun. Fellas, thanks for your time. Thanks for your understanding with that little weird interruption, that skip, if you will, in the middle of it. It's great to see you both.
Oh, thanks for having us. This was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
You got it.
See you guys soon.
I'm looking forward to the full-length film. Very cool stuff. The live chat right now is just so great. Kim, I love this because Kim is drawing our attention to where we have not really. So there's vinyl, obviously. We've not talked at all about 8 tracks. We've talked a bit about CDs and obviously streaming music, right? Which is like the whole new. Can you imagine back in the day? I mean, I've traveled Europe. I've traveled South America for like months at a time. And part of the space that you would set aside in your backpack was for your Discman, a bunch of AA batteries, and the cherished, like, I mean, every person would be different, but I would carry about 15 CDs. Like because you don't want your pack to be too heavy. You don't want it to take too much room. So those 15 CDs. Now, like, you know what I mean? Kids these days are going to have no appreciation.
No appreciation. I actually, when I was traveling Europe, as one does, I guess, I had my iPod, and it was so important to me.
Yeah.
Because it was literally, maybe I'm going to sound self-important, but my soundtrack. It is what took me through. And so when I hear some of those songs, even to this day, like Postal Service, the band Postal Service,
what a band.
was like, is my Europe experience. Like, It was just, but I actually I'm going to have to do a hard disagree with you on this one about the kids these days.
Just for a change?
Just for a change. Yeah. True. But that's what I'm here for, is to disagree with you. That's what I'm paid the big bucks for.
You think kids have an appreciation for the old school, the challenges of, I mean, like carrying, like, because I'm even thinking back to the Zip Up. Remember the brand Case Logic?
Yes.
Remember the Case Logic cassettes that you'd have in your car?
I still, like, the thing is I have an 8-track player. I have 8 tracks. I have a record player. And I also have that big massive binder. The thing that is really shocking to me, though, is, like, remember when you used to, like, protect that with your life? Protect that with your life, because if you had that binder, or even on the what is it? Wire words?
Yeah, the visor.
The
in
visor.
Your car.
Yeah, the sun visor. There we go.
The Velcro thing that you could slide all your CDs into.
And it was terrifying if someone caught glimpse of that, because someone would steal it. Now you can just leave that huge binder.
Yeah, like
on.
Do whatever you want, man.
Yeah, you can leave it outside. No one will touch that thing.
Yeah. Are you Sam? You and I have never really talked about this. You strike me as a guy that might have a vinyl.
Oh
collection.
man, You know what's funny is that, like, you know, like high school for me was the CD era as well. Like I got my first iPod, I think, like late in junior high, and that's what I'd listen to on the bus and that kind of stuff too. But I remember burning mixed CDs for myself and downloading music, but like the other thing, and this is really weird, and I was actually kind of thinking about sort of the experiential like listening of it, is because, you know, in my house I have an entire bookshelf with about 400 CDs on it.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of this collection for so long, and long after streaming became mainstream, I still kept buying CDs because I just liked having a physical product. And then I kind of woke myself up, and I was just kind of like, you know, I would buy vinyl presses of the records that I really cared about.
Yes.
And then I just kind of realized that, like, you know, if I'm going to pay for music, if I'm going to pay for the physical object, it's just going to be vinyl from now on. Like, you know, even though I've a really nice stereo and a 5-disc CD changer hooked up to it, which I've never put more than 1 disc in, I love that my vinyl collection is the thing that's growing the fastest. And then even, you know, we talked about a month ago how I'm like currently finishing my basement, and you know, if 10 years ago I was planning how to get my house ready, I probably wouldn't be prioritizing a place to store records and a place to put a turntable. But in, you know, now in the design of how I'm finishing out my basement, like there has to be a good stereo down there.
100%.
There has
Especially
to be
if you have
like
the
a listening
opportunity
lounge
to
space.
kind of reinvent it. I'm going back, like Kim's comment, by the way, she's talking about, she says like there was basically no better way to get in touch with music than to be, you know, have a blank tape and you're trying to use the radio to get the blank and to like make your mix. But the funny thing is like in the world of broadcasting, you know, like DJs, right? The hosts of these shows, DJs, you try to hit your post. So you're doing promos for the radio station. I think back to the legendary Rick Sadler on AM 106 in Calgary. I mean, like I grew up the top 6 at 6, the top 10 at 10. AM 106, top 6 at 6. It was like this big, and then he'd be like, hey, everybody, it's Rick Sadler here from the Sadler Dome. And he'd be like doing his thing. And it talk, right up until boom, Steven Tyler kicks in with his like love in an elevator, whatever, right? So as a broadcaster, you want to hit the post. So you're like, coming up next on this is Aerosmith, love in an elevator, and you're like, yes, I hit the post, I nailed it. Meantime, all the kids who have one finger on record and one finger on pause are like, stop talking. Stop talking. I want to get the stop talking. Yes. Right?
Yes.
Oh, memories. Share your memories. Here's the thing. We got a federal cabinet minister that's like literally waiting, being like, when are these idiots going to do this interview? So I got to stop talking about vinyl and CDs and tapes just for a bit. Just for a bit, so we can get serious, and then we can get right back to this. I'm quickly going to remind you that the team at Kubi Energy is hiring right now. They're looking for journeyman electricians. This is a perfect transition into our conversation with the Honourable Mary Ng, Small Business Minister. Kubi Energy knows that it's been a tough go for a lot of people that have been working traditionally in oil and gas. As an example, Jake's the founder, right? Jake Kubisky's been on the show before on our solar panel. His personal story is a guy working in the oil patch that took his skilled experience and turned it into sustainable energy and his entrepreneurial journey. So he gets it. And right now, if you feel like this might be a fit for you, you're a journeyman electrician that might be looking for a bit of a change in career or a new opportunity, today's the day to email your resume to info@kubienergy.ca. That's Kuby, info@kubienergy.ca. We wish all you job hunters the absolute best. And if you're a real talker that ends up getting on with Kubi Energy, you make sure you let us know. Well, this federal budget is one of the biggest ones, one of the most ambitious ones. Obviously, there's a lot of spending in it. It's been described as an election platform by some political critics of the federal Liberal government. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland and, of course, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on this show just a couple of weeks ago argued that it'll fight COVID-19, it'll support jobs and growth, and it will invest in a sustainable economic recovery that includes all Canadians. The Honourable Mary Ng is Canada's Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. Minister, thanks for tolerating our swerving conversation around music and records and tapes and CDs. And welcome to Real Talk.
Kidding?
Thanks for being here. Are you like an audiophile? Are you a real music collector?
Yeah, well, you know what? I was listening to that and I thought, oh my gosh, I can relate to everything. I can relate to the CDs in the binder. I can relate to the double A's in your backpack.
Oh, man. Oh, so you've been waiting for a while is what you're saying.
So I think it's great. But listen, you know what? Before we even go to start, I have to actually, and I apologize for this, but I got to do a shout out to the Penner family, to Marcia and to Margaret. So they're Edmontonians. And the reason I need to do that is because they're the mama and the grandma of my communications director in my office. And you're going to be surprised by this, but 75% of my senior team, from my chief of staff to my comms director to my director of policy, are all Albertans. And in fact, Edmontonians or surrounding Edmonton. So I got lots of Alberta on my team, but I needed to shout out to the Penners.
Well, hey, I'll amplify that shout out, and I'm stoked that the Penners are watching this morning. How does having an office full of Albertans influence your perspective as the minister? I mean, essentially in charge of small business, export promotion, and international trade.
It's terrific because I have a team that is that embodies that go get it attitude, that entrepreneurialism, and just that roll up your sleeves and let's find the solutions to the problems. So this budget, of course, sets us up to finish this fight against COVID-19 and puts us on that road so that we can help our businesses get on that road to economic recovery and to create the jobs that's going to fuel our future economy. So I love the example that you gave just before we started talking about a great Albertan who's taken his former experience in oil and gas and turn it into an innovative new business. And there are terrific examples of that. And that's what this budget will do. It's going to help traditional businesses get on that road to recovery, but it's also going to invest in some really excellent entrepreneurs. And I hope many out of Edmonton and out of Alberta so that we can get on this road to recovery into, beyond COVID-19.
Minister, I don't know if you read John Iveson's piece in the National Post. This was back essentially the day after the budget came out. And he said the federal budget's not for you. He said it's out to crush the NDP and shame conservatives. And I want to read you a portion of what he wrote and give you a chance to respond to it. He said the Liberals have decided to extend the wage subsidy, the rent subsidy, to extend lockdown support until September at a time when it should be transitioning to help the firms that are really in trouble. The government said it would predicate its budget on labor market performance, but it appears to have ignored month-on-month improvements in jobs that have brought unemployment rate down to 7.5 percentage points, just 2 percentage points above where it was pre-pandemic. He's making the argument that the economy is on a path to recovery and that a lot of this spending and this support really is either unnecessary or not focused in the right direction. How would you counter-argue that?
Well, I would counter-argue it by all the small businesses that I've been talking to and have been talking to from day one. I was here in Alberta just last week talking to both the Edmonton and the Calgary chambers and the businesses who they represent. My office and my department has had, at the beginning of the pandemic, daily calls at 11 o'clock where businesses would dial in and we'd be able to hear from their perspective what the issues are. And of course, then it was just like, how do we make sure that we continue to operate as a business? And we're looking to make sure we can pay our bills. We're looking for a bit of that working capital because we got bills to pay. I don't want to lay off my people. How do I keep them on payroll? And I've got this thing called rent that I've got to still pay for because I have, I have those obligations. So right now, and to all the businesses and the Canadians who are listening, I mean, and I know that the situation is challenging with COVID. And I want you to know that the federal government is there. We're there with you, for you, but finishing this fight and having that support and those businesses, particularly the small businesses, having that support is absolutely essential. So my answer is I listen to small businesses across this country. I listen to the entrepreneurs across the country. They are looking for this additional support while vaccinations are getting into the arms of Canadians. So they're going to have this until September. We've created some flexibility there. Should the COVID situation require it? I hope not, but should it? We have some flexibility to make sure that businesses really are supported. We've always said, look, we got to help you until we can get to the other side of COVID-19. And at the same time, our job recovery program, for example, starts in June. That's exactly what businesses have said. They said, look, we're going to plan for our recovery, and I need to know, who am I going to bring back? Am I going to extend the workers that I have now, or am I going to add hours? Am I going to need to bring in new ones? So the job recovery program out of this budget starts in June. So that's going to run sort of at the same time that the emergency programs are. So it really is finish the fight and support businesses. At the same time, make the investments, let them do that planning. And then on digital, think about it. You walk around kind of in your neighborhoods. How many businesses have you seen take, kind of use solutions like adding a click to their brick? A lot, right? So there's a $4 billion investment here for digital adoption because we want to see more businesses get those tools that they've been asking for so that they can compete getting into this recovery and certainly compete going forward as well.
There are some positive things, certainly for workers in the budget. $3 billion invested to enhance EI sick benefits, as an example, from 15 to 26 weeks. And as is the case with the budget and government expenditures, you got to pay for it somehow. And I think in the small print, people may not have noticed, for example, that EI premiums are set to rise for workers from $1.58 per $100 of insurable earnings to $1.83 over the next 7 years or so to keep the EI fund in balance. How do you balance as minister? How does cabinet balance? How does the government intend to balance the need for some of what Canadians are asking for, like more comprehensive or more robust sick day protection, EI benefits, etc., while at the same time recognizing that it's going to mean downloaded costs on individuals? How do you strike that balance, let me say, ideologically, and then how does it play out?
Well, the position that the Canadian government has taken from day one is help Canadians get through this. I mean, workers and people. I mean, you think about in Alberta, CERB was a very necessary support that was needed in order for all of us to do our part to keep people safe. But our approach has always been, let's support businesses, let's support Canadians, and in this budget, making those right investments so that we can get to jobs and growth. There is the best way to be able to afford this, the best way to afford the supports that Canadians are looking for is to create the environment so that businesses can actually grow and create jobs, and in that jobs and growth gives us that ability to to pay for the programs. I mean, when we look at the $30 billion investment that we are going to be making to get the over 100,000 women that have come out of the workforce because of this pandemic, because they're juggling so many hats, so that we can do affordable childcare, is one area where we're really looking forward to working with, with the provinces and working with businesses to make sure that we can really tackle that, so that businesses, families, women entrepreneurs, women workers are able to get back into the workforce in full-fledged, because we're only as good as our people, right? I mean, so making sure that those investments are there. And for businesses, I mean, a $1.5 million expense, sort of covering of expenses. We want this budget to incent businesses to invest in themselves. So when I talk about these technological solutions, we want to make sure that as businesses are investing in themselves, that they're getting the incentives to do that too. When businesses are growing and creating jobs, it's going to help families, it's going to help communities, and in that, it is also going to help Canada's economy. So this budget is very much about growth and jobs, and we're there working with Albertans and Edmontonians. I think that there's some really terrific opportunities. I'm also the international trade minister, so making sure that businesses are not only starting up in Alberta, but that they're scaling up and accessing new markets is also what I need to be doing. And there's some great examples of Alberta businesses doing exactly that. And I was doing a virtual trade mission just in Europe just a few weeks ago, and a couple of really great Albertan businesses in the clean technology space, really being able to look at customers. I mean, not only here in Canada, but around the world. So I'm looking forward to making those investments so that our businesses can indeed grow.
Minister, it's a fascinating. Your portfolio. Minister of Small Business and Minister of International Trade. There are some synergies there, obviously, but also those are huge. What do Canadian small businesses need most, and what does Canada need most on the international trade front could be wildly different conversations. I think back just off the top of my head, lumber, aluminum, canola. I mean, there have been like huge challenges for Canadian exporters over the past while. What has changed there? Are there more challenges as a result of this pandemic? And what's this budget doing for Canadian exporters that have had a tough go over the past few years, including through that Trump presidency?
Yeah, I mean, the work that we've done consistently, and I think we have a record to show for this, which is standing up for Canadian workers and standing up for those Canadian businesses. And export is so important. Canada is a trading country. And so making sure that we are helping our Canadian exporters get access to markets and to stay there or to grow their customer base is what we are doing. I mean, I get to tout that Canada is the only G7 country that has a trade agreement with all of our other G7 partners. We have trade agreements, of course, renegotiated in NAFTA by Chrystia Freeland with the US and Mexico. But we also have trade agreements in Europe and in Asia Pacific as well. But what really are trade agreements? They're customers. 1.5 billion customers in the international marketplace. And my job as the small business minister is to make sure that small businesses, women-owned enterprises, Indigenous entrepreneurs, racialized entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs are able to get access to those markets. It isn't the easiest thing. I mean, for businesses, if you're a small business thinking, how do I grow my business in Europe? How do I grow my business into Asia? So during this pandemic, I haven't let the pandemic stop me from helping businesses go global. I have hosted several virtual trade missions. So we've had to pivot as a government as well. This latest one is to France. Over 300 businesses that we took. I mean, one of the Alberta businesses that we took there is a company called Carbon Upcycling Technologies. They are terrific. They're using CO2 as a resource. Like they've launched recently an e-commerce platform. It's called Expedition Air, but they're selling consumer products made from the captured carbon emissions. So this is the kind of innovation and creativity. But 300 businesses that I took to France with women entrepreneurs, Indigenous entrepreneurs, another over 200 businesses that I took to South Korea. We had a mission go to Singapore to celebrate the 3rd year anniversary of our agreement with the European Union. We did a 2-day summit, over 1,100 businesses. And this is just within the last 6 months, right? I mean, so making sure that we really are helping our businesses, particularly our small businesses. And interestingly enough, during this pandemic, the mode of being able to do this virtually seems to have created a more accessible way for our smaller businesses to be able to learn and understand what those opportunities are in the international marketplace. So in some respects, what we're doing for the Main Street businesses is very complementary to what we're doing to those very businesses that are starting, and they're starting global, as far as I'm concerned, that and helping them get access to those international customers.
Minister, we've got to let you go, so I'm going to leave a few questions on the table, but I look forward to speaking with you again. I'm going to tee this up. So our next conversation, we've got some listeners here that are saying that there's inequity in the tax rates. They say that Canada needs a more progressive tax system between small, medium, and large businesses. They say there's an inherent disadvantage there for small businesses. We'll launch there next time we have a chance to connect. Thanks for making time for us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I look forward to coming back again. The next time that I'm here, I'm going to tell you how me as a new immigrant family who settled in Winnipeg ended up learning about the Edmonton Oilers and having huge fans of the family. So I got to tell you about that the next time we talk.
Okay, well, Sarah Hoyles will keep notes on all of that. That's the Honourable Mary Ng. Our appreciation to you. That's Canada's Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion, and International Trade. Want to let you know that we have active interview requests with Canada's official opposition, the Conservative Party of Canada, with the NDP, federal NDP, and with Canada's Green Party. We're looking forward to checking in with their new leader, Annamie Paul. Should be a great conversation. So there's always wheels in motion, always things happening behind the scenes here on Real Talk. You always look forward to hearing what our other elected officials, what the other parliamentarians will have to say about that federal budget. And of course, we'll continue the conversation based in large part as well with what you're telling us. Where's your impression at? What are you small business owners looking for in a federal budget? What sort of assistance would actually mean something to you, and what's maybe not as relevant or not as applicable? You know, Lal Azaz says small business help has not really covered the very small business, where maybe punting rent or taxes down the road was a worse idea than trying to limp through. Kim says a lower tax rate for really small businesses, for smaller small business, she says, would be actually life-changing. I've heard some great comments from people that have talked about, I talked to a small business owner the other day telling me about the tens of thousands of dollars that they're paying in property taxes every single year, saying, we haven't even been able to be open I heard from a guy yesterday. I won't say who he is because it's really not my business to share his business publicly. But he said we had a lot of money in the bank, like relatively speaking. They're a small business, but he goes, we had money in the bank before this pandemic. He says every month that we're not open, it costs us about $12,000. Like, this is a small business owner. It's not like this isn't CNRL or Suncor or RBC, or Google losing $12,000 a month. This is a real life human being with a small business that employs some other people. He said, we had money in the bank before COVID. He says, we're going to come out of this, and they're forecast. I mean, who knows when this is going to end, right? Get vaccinated, stay home. Let's all, be smart, et cetera, all the usual things. Wash your hands, wear a mask. Let's get back out. Let's get back out there and get back to as close to normal as we can find. This guy is telling me he's so eager for that. He says, we're going to be 200 G's in the hole. We had money in the bank when it started. We're going to be 200 G's in the hole. He goes, we're going to work like hell, of course, because he's an entrepreneur, and that's how you approach this. You entrepreneurs know this. He goes, we're going to work like hell. He goes, we got a 4 or 5 year plan. He goes, we'll be okay. But it's discouraging, right? And everybody's got different solutions, which is, I think also worthwhile noting that we want this to be a forum for discussion where maybe the Honourable Mary Ng comes on and prompts someone like Heidi to say it's hard to believe this is actually what a politician is supposed to be like when we're so used to what we see elsewhere, says Heidi, But then there are going to be some people that think probably what Mary Ng talked about there, or maybe what the federal budget contains, is out to lunch and doesn't fit. I mean, I think that there's a conversation that demands to be had, and we're having it in snippets over an economy that is showing signs of recovery. Some people saying economic stimulus and support has been important, but it's especially important to keep it focused in the right direction and have those hundreds of millions or billions of dollars focused in the right direction to impact meaningful, or to have a meaningful stimulus effect. You can reach us anytime, talk@ryanjesperson.com, or use the hashtag RealTalkRJ, and of course our live chat. It's a beautiful animal. It's a beautiful wild animal, and they solve the world's problems there every single day on our YouTube channel. The team at Westworld Computers powers our studio each and every day, and of course they wanted to remind you that in addition to the Mac lineup, in addition to all the Apple products that you've known them for more than 40 years as an independently owned small business, they're also all about sound. The sounds of the summer will not sound so sweet, or they'll never have sounded more sweet than when you invest in an entire home Sonos audio system. They can hook you up at Westworld, recommend what works best for you. This is the audio system everybody's talking about, goes through your entire home, but not all the time. You want to turn on the patio speakers, turn them on. You want to move that sound to the kitchen or maybe upstairs. They're watching a movie. You want to kill the music upstairs, have it playing in the basement, while you shoot snooker with your friends, whatever the case. I'm describing my dream house, not where I live right now. It will have Sonos, and I will get it from Westworld Computers. Voice control, multi-room listening, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth streaming, all-day battery life. They can answer all your questions in person, in Edmonton, or at westworld.ca. We also wanted to remind you about Power Ed. This is our friends at Athabasca University. This is a really, really neat initiative. Tomorrow's Digital Wellness Day, and we're going to dedicate our Real Talk Roundtable to that, to digital wellness. It's one of the themes of what they have going on right now at Power Ed. You can see it here at powered.ca, powered by Athabasca University. Short online, on-demand professional development courses and certificates like leadership, as mentioned, digital wellness, allyship, inclusion, artificial intelligence, digital transformation, and more. You can learn all about it and find your fit. Learning on demand. I love that at powered.ca. Our next guest has endeared herself to thousands of Canadians for the way that she has shared her personal experiences, her opinions, her candor on social media. Whether you know her personally or not, you certainly know her if you're on Twitter. Dr. Fiona Mattatall is a doctor of obstetrics and gynecology based out of the province of Alberta, making her Real Talk debut today. Welcome to the show, Doctor. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? We've never met in person.
No, you got it bang on.
It's great to have you here. I've been so curious even to see what you look like, because you have this great your profile picture, this awesome, wonderful. It's like a cartoon version. You got your mask on. You're a physician. It's come to represent your account. To me, has come to represent sort of somewhat of a trustworthy source for information and insight through the course of this pandemic. And I can't remember. I was racking my brain earlier and planning to talk to you. I'm like, did I follow her for years before the pandemic, or have I just felt a connection with her in the last year or so? Are you like old school? Are you an OG of social media, or was this something that came about as a result of the pandemic?
I think I'm having those same feelings too, that I feel like I've known these people forever. I started on Twitter years ago when Chris Hadfield was up in the space station, and I went on Twitter to follow him. Then I didn't do much for a while, then just started, connecting on Twitter. And this last year has been huge in terms of connection, for good and for bad, with colleagues, with people, and just as a place to go to both rage and find some solace with other humans.
Has that been, do you think that, has there been a need for an outlet like that in past that COVID-19 just exacerbated? I mean, with regards to like frustration or stress or rage, I would imagine that those aren't feelings that you felt just for the first time ever 14 months ago. I mean, how much has that changed? How much has the need for an outlet changed in the last while?
I think, first off, for us Alberta physicians, it started before the pandemic, as I'm sure you're aware, as a place to come together and advocate not only for ourselves, but for our patients. As an Alberta physician who works in reproductive health, the raging started about 2 years ago with some changes and proposed changes to our patient care in this province. But I think what the pandemic has really forced us to do is to come together in spaces where we normally would have gone to a coffee shop, to a pub, get together, laugh, cry, and we don't have that now. So Twitter has become a place for all of that. And I think for many of us in Canada and Alberta, it's somewhat of a safe space. I find myself posting a tweet, then going, oh my God, I better delete that because there's language in there that could get me in trouble in terms of my job or insult somebody. So it's a place to come together and for the good and the bad. It's
been fascinating to watch healthcare workers. It's been fascinating. I keep talking about this, how so when I win the lottery, because I got these big plans, and I've already decided how I'm spending the $30 million and everything, and part of that is I can't wait to I'm going to start doing long form documentaries. It's always been a dream of mine to do documentary films, and I think looking back on the impacts of COVID-19 and some of the trends, some of the things we saw, what will have a residual effect, what will go away, what will be but a memory, all these types of things, cultural influences, how we feel about masks, how people change the way they behave, physical distancing, spatial relationships, all these types of things. One of those is the first of all, the stress that healthcare workers have faced, some of the vitriol that they have faced, also the enormous appreciation they have faced. But I wonder if some of that is kind of going away. We had guests earlier today, physicians that were saying, remember sort of back in the day, we're all in this together. And if you were to take a look at the news headlines these days, you might have to search for evidence that we're all in this together, and you'd find ample evidence to argue the contrary. But doctors have had to step up in a way like not before. And a lot of new accounts have started because doctors have felt the need like they've never felt before for advocacy. I mean, even just here in Alberta, as you talk about the Alberta MD War Room, it's unofficial, but it's like, if not my favorite account on Twitter, it's like top 10. They're so proud, as they should be, that they have more Twitter followers than the $30 million a year War Room. But they've been fighting for Alberta doctors behind the scenes and doing a hell of a job of it. It's been, I think it's placed an unprecedented onus, I think, on a lot of physicians who have reached out. Some of them we've asked to be on the show, and they've felt the need to preserve their anonymity, which is telling in itself. But this on a profession, and I'm not just talking doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, paramedics, whoever you want to talk about, respiratory therapists, that are already feeling pulled and strained and stressed and exhausted. And then there's the advocacy angle, which for many has been very We're not trained to do this.
for a lot of my colleagues I see on social media, we're at a stage in our career where we really don't have any shit left to give. We're speaking for ourselves, but sometimes for our younger colleagues or colleagues who aren't in a position where they can speak up. And it puts a target on your back as well as doing the work, but you get a thick skin and you just keep on going.
So one of the reasons we reached out, I mean, I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time anyway, so thanks for doing this. But one of the reasons we reached out was a thread that you put out just a short time ago, yesterday, where you said, when all of this is behind us, you know, there are a few Albertans you said that we need to give out awards to. And first up, the award for helping so many navigate vaccine booking. And you nominate the Vax Hunters, who we had on just a few days ago, just a couple of amazing people, a couple of remarkable people. You've nominated Robson Fletcher, who's done an incredible job with the CBC. Robson, in my mind, has been one of those that has really stepped up to make a major impact. You've nominated Julie Van Rosendahl, who joined us a few weeks ago. Julie is just obviously so amazing for her work. You say getting us going on sourdough starter and distracting our thinking. When she blew up that story about the changes in butter, that was what she was talking to us about. Who would have thought that an interview about butter would go 30 minutes and be absolutely amazing? But then you ask who else deserves awards and what should we call them and what should the recipients get? And we've been having some fun. Maybe we call them the Reject the Premise Awards. There's a whole lot of great suggestions. Where'd you get the idea? Where'd this come from?
You know, it just came to me yesterday. So I think, like many Albertans, last weekend was the worst. Your rage on Monday morning was catharsis for me and many of my colleagues. And I sat in a very low place over the weekend, thinking about the numbers on one hand, fellow Albertans behaving in ways that put the rest of us at risk, and the anger where that is not, it's thinking of themselves. They don't see what's happening to patients, to people in hospital, to those of us looking after our loved ones, our sick people in the province. So for me, the weekend was peak rage. And coming out of that, I was at work yesterday and I was on call at the hospital. So my day started in the emergency department, was called down by a fabulous colleague emergency physician, spoke to some of the nurses down there, all in PPE, doing the right things, took a patient to the operating room, working with nurses, unit clerks, other physicians, everybody just doing the right thing quietly and greatly. And as I drove home, I was thinking, okay, got to get out of that bad headspace, because that's only really a few Albertans. They're having a big impact, but it's only really a few. This isn't my province. This is not who represents us. This is not what's going to get us through. And my raging was no longer productive. So I thought, you know, who are those helpers? And like you guys were talking about at the beginning, it's what Mr. Rogers said, look to the helpers. And there are far more helpers on big scale and on small scale, doing the right thing and making lives better for the rest of us. And I think while we do need to bring attention to the bad that's going on and appropriately rage about it, I think on the other hand, we do need to refocus some of that spotlight on people like Julie Van Rosendahl. She's an amazing human who not only with distracting us with Buttergate, but quietly, she is helping support small businesses in her community, the restaurants. This tweet came up yesterday that she's helping raise money for India. And she is my Alberta, not a rodeo clown. And so this is a very fresh new idea. I don't know what to call these awards. I loved that I've had over 30 nominations that followed my 3, and many who I feel bad that I missed. But the journalists, a bunch of journalists were listed, and I think that's where the name, what was it? I Reject the Premise Award, which I think is fabulous.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm thinking of, my mind goes in, I try to pull back the curtain so the audience can know what goes on between my ears while I'm having a conversation like this. And I think oftentimes in metaphors, because I think they cut to the chase. And I think of, you know, the people that attended this rodeo over the weekend, and I'm thinking of them like mosquitoes, where you do not underestimate the mosquito. I mean, malaria is, if not the biggest killer in the world, it's among the biggest killer. I mean, mosquitoes in some parts of the world are absolutely deadly and can be a real problem. But a mosquito at a picnic as well, were you to have all your friends together in a fabulous spread with the finest cheese and a nice chilled Gewürztraminer, as an example. Or I might be more of a Chablis guy right now, I'm feeling. And you were to allow a pesky mosquito to destroy the picnic, turn everyone against one another, send everybody home feeling poisonous with elevated blood pressure and nothing but anger. You would have let this mosquito win, when the best way to deal with it is just to smack it down every once in a while. That's how you got to deal with it. And what I love about this is that whether or not there's ultimately going to be an awards show, and I'll donate my time to host it, that would be my honor to do so. Whether or not we get actual plaques or trophies or maybe a sash of some sort, whether or not we're able to gather and have a swanky catered event is irrelevant. What matters is that you've started a conversation on social media, which can be a real cesspool. And you've focused people, you've reminded people that, like Mr. Rogers said so many years ago, we need, what his mom taught him, is we do need to look for the helpers, and we need to celebrate the people. I mean, I think, you talk about people that are putting on PPE. I think about the people that are disposing of the PPE. I'm thinking of the people that are cleaning up puke in the bathrooms or wiping people's butts. I mean, like, it's not all glamorous what happens in these hospitals. What about the food delivery drivers? Or what about the people that don't get all the, I mean, hey, we get a lot of attention. We get a lot of praise in this job. You get, I mean, let me say physicians are a little bit different. You guys get piled on a whole lot and it's ridiculous. But there are people that are notable, that get the accolades, that get the attention. And then there are thousands of people that don't. And I'm hoping to see a trend as part of your thread, or a bigger conversation about appreciation on an individual level, where people see in their own neighborhood. I mean, our letter carrier, Rick, you wouldn't know this. He observes. I want to say, I'm not saying he's not observing safety protocol. Don't misinterpret the comment. But you'd never know there was a pandemic going on if you were to see Rick doing his job, because he's always wearing a hat that makes everybody smile or laugh, especially in the winter. He's got these ridiculous pom-pom toques. He wears shorts almost 12 months a year. He's got a smile from ear to ear every single day. He knows the little kids' names on the street. He's friendly with the dogs. I mean, a guy like Rick has provided people's connection in many circumstances to the outside world just by delivering their mail every day. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. They're quietly amazing people who live and walk among us. As you were saying that, I was just thinking of the last pregnant mom I looked after who had COVID in pregnancy and had a real struggle with that. And she caught it at work. She is a new Canadian, works in a setting where she was not adequately protected from this virus, and caught it in pregnancy and came to hospital. We were there with her. We cared for her through her delivery. And at the end, she was not complaining about anything. She was thanking all of us for our work looking after her. And those are the people that make our province and make our place great. And those are the people I think deserve the accolades. So I don't know where these awards go. I'm really happy to see a number of the nominations I got are guests on your show, which tells me you're doing it right. You are shining a light on what is good about this province, but please don't stop the rants and the trash talk, because we need that too.
But can I say though, you tweeted something to me. I don't have it in front of me. I don't remember what it was, and I don't mean this to come across as self-congratulatory, but you tweeted something at me that stopped me in my tracks. As a matter of fact, for maybe the first time in my life, I went to respond to it, and then I needed time, because you said something along the lines of you hoped that I knew that my rants or my advocacy was giving you the power to push through a tough shift or something like that. Yeah. And it just was like, to hear that, right? Like, and you, I'm so glad I can say this to kind of to your face. But you just you filled my tank. But to be vulnerable for a second and to be an open book, I struggle with it and wrestle with it because I am an emotional person. Anybody that knows me personally knows that I'm usually pretty funny. But sometimes I'm pissed. And when I am, I'm not always the best guy to be around because I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I always have. And I had to learn as a young man that I'm inclined to say things that can hurt people's feelings. I've had to learn to apologize in my life. I've had to learn to focus my rage. I mean, that's on my personal journey. So as a broadcaster sometimes, and people have seen it even on this show, sometimes I'll pull back the curtain, and sometimes I'll walk myself into territory where I'll make confident comments on things that not everyone will agree with because it's the way I feel and because I'm going to say it. And I'll get feedback from people, and it's mixed feedback. And sometimes it's like, thank you for fighting. Thank you for throwing punches. And oftentimes it's not feedback like that. Oftentimes it's, implying that there's a negativity, that it's divisive, that it discourages people. It puts people in a bad headspace. I had to turn it off. You were taking me to a place that was not healthy. And I really wrestle with that because sometimes it's important to throw punches sometimes. And sometimes it's important to advocate and to, we talk to people on this show. Some of them will choose their words very carefully. Other people will shoot from the hip. Both of them can be effective approaches. But I've really struggled with it. And I think about it we're on the air for 2 hours a day. We're off for 22 hours a day. And I spend the 22 hours thinking about the two. Yeah.
I can very much relate. And, I think, and this is also part of what makes Alberta great, and we need to remember, is you struggling with that and bringing to the show that honesty. And that work helps us do our work, and our work helps keep the province going in terms of health. And the workers at Cargill, their work keeps us fed. And it's only as a society where we all contribute and elevate each other can we get out of this mess.
Doctor, so here we are. I think that there is room for a conversation around, in all seriousness, some form of awards. I absolutely love it. If it ends up just being a hashtag, or if it just ends up being this thread that you started, which I'm so grateful for. I mean, I've found people, there's people on there. I mean, there's a lot of familiar. I mean, like Dr. Kasia Gasparovitz, who's been on the show before. She's got this, her statistical, what she brings to the table from a numbers analysis and mapping standpoint, right? And then public health professionals that come in at a more sort of layperson's level to help us all understand some of the trends. I mean, there's just been so many different angles here, and I love that you've started the conversation. And by the way, you're still showing up for work every day and helping people out, which we appreciate very much. Thanks for doing the show. Keep it up. I bet you've gained some new fans here today from doing this interview, and just wait till the podcast hits this afternoon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Doc. Proud to consider you a friend. That's Dr. Fiona Mattatall, who's an Alberta-based obstetrician, a gynecologist. And of course, you can find her on Twitter at Fiona Mattatall. I link to all of them out of the beginning of, right around 8 o'clock Mountain, 10 o'clock Eastern, every weekday morning at Ryan Jesperson. That's my Twitter handle. She's like soft-spoken and chill, but at the same time, like, her Twitter is unreal. She's just, you don't always have to be this like blustering. That's kind of what I'm getting at, I guess, in a way. Like, there's a time and a place for that. But also just, I'm so proud of, and it's not just medical professionals, of so many people that have taken a measured, responsible, but assertive position on their messaging through the pandemic.
I love that, assertive. And I think, looking back to just yesterday's episode with Albert, again, articulate, thoughtful, reflective, looking at, what are small things, but powerful things that everyday Albertans, in whatever station in life they are in, what difference they can make. And that's why when I started seeing this thread, start to catch on and people nominating people, it just, I don't know, it was heartening.
Very cool. Yeah. You think of what does assertive mean? There was a listener who I know means well for sure, and wrote into the show, sent us an email, and he was like, Jespo, you should debate the owner of the Whistle Stop Cafe, this cafe that was like locked up and chains around, chain link fence around it yesterday. You should debate him on the show. It would be like great interview. And I have no doubt it would be great. I mean, like watching the Harlem Globetrotters beat up on the Washington Generals is great. but we're not learning anything. But I just thought, what's the debate going to be about? Like, I believe in science. I don't believe in science. I win.
Yeah.
Debate done. Thanks for joining us on the show. Like, it's the assertive like, to me, we need to address things like vaccine hesitancy, and I understand. I mean, someone will point out and say, boy, there was a case of blood clot from the AstraZeneca vaccine here, and someone's in a bad way or somebody's passed away, and then people will point out, well, hang on a second, though, there's been a handful of these out of millions of doses, and there's room around that. We have to address that. We have to have conversations around that kind of thing, right?
Absolutely.
We have to have those conversations. But when it comes down to the basic, like, is COVID real, I'm not going to entertain debates about that, right? I mean, there's just ample evidence. There's ample evidence.
Like, we are beyond that. We've moved past that. I mean, I know some folks have not, but it's at their own peril.
But I mean, a flat Earth conference will get a couple thousand people to show up. So, like, you're not going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to convince everybody all the time. And I think it's a bit of a fool's errand to try to do so. I want to show you a bit of audio, or rather a bit of video in just a second. This is amazing. But first, I want to remind you that the team at Alta Moving and Storage has been so proudly locally owned and locally operating in Alberta. They wanted to remind you that they are Alberta's movers. They're Albertans just like you, families and friends that depend on them. And when it comes to moving, you can depend on them. They're trustworthy, they're dependable, they're knowledgeable, and they're specialists at finding solutions that fit your unique situation and your budget. The star of their show is the pod-style moving container, where they can drop it off at your house, fill it up at your leisure. Whether you need helping hands or not, they can make that happen. They drop it off at the new spot, and there you go. You don't have this truck, this big 18-wheeler idling outside your house, adding stress. They take care of as much as you need when you need it. They are Albertans at Alta Moving and Storage. Let's move together. You can find them under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com. A reminder that our hashtag RealTalkRJ is powered by the team at Park Power. And of course, Park Power has been providing Albertans with internet, electricity, and natural gas for coming up on 10 years. They take 10% of their profits and plug them back into community. You can find out more about those initiatives by following them on Instagram or Twitter. In the meantime, when you check out their website, parkpower.ca, use the promo code 2021-RealTalk to knock $70 off your first bill, residential or commercial, at parkpower.ca. Your eyes just lit up. Am I allowed to ask why, or is this like a behind-the-scenes thing? I'm thrusting you into the spot. Your eyes lit up big time.
They really did.
Did we just confirm President Joe Biden on tomorrow's show, or what?
No.
Okay.
But better news is that AHS says that in the first 40 minutes of online booking today,
Yes.
more than 16,000 appointments were made.
Okay. In the first 40 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that good? I'm trying to figure out if that's good.
That's a lot of
16
appointments.
There's 4.5 million people here, though. I'm trying to figure out.
In the first 40 minutes?
Yeah, but 40 minutes is a long time.
Oh my goodness.
Like if the Rolling Stones were coming to Alberta in 40 minutes, they would sell way more than 16,000 tickets.
But you have to also take into account
I'm not trying to be cynical.
What website they're using.
Yeah.
If it's got the capacity, the horsepower to be able to handle those. I mean, to me, what it is it's saying there's excitement. I don't know, excitement, but there's a willingness. There are people that are saying, I am now eligible. Get me in there. Get that syringe in my arm.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. It looks like a lot of real talkers have been doing it. Scarlett's watching it. She says, Jespo, let Sarah have this one. It's not. We're not.
Thank you, Scarlett.
This is not. We're not setting up some sort of like inherent disagreement. I'm just.
Are we not?
I'm just trying to Here's what I want to see. Like I want to see news reports say that 150,000 Albertans booked their appointments in the first 10 minutes. I'm just looking for context. 16,000 in 40 minutes. Like. More than 16,000 people will access today's episode of Real Talk. So I'm just saying 16,000 is either a lot or not a lot, depending on your perspective.
Fair.
I'm not trying to be. I guess what I'm trying to do is encourage us to be even better. Everybody, give it the old college try.
Thanks, Coach Jesby.
You got it. Emma says, I'm getting vaccinated today, and I'm so excited, and I feel like a kid on Christmas morning. Jake says, Jespo, don't diminish the fact that there were 16,000 appointments made. I'm not diminishing. I'm not.
Some of us that want to book an appointment badly today are doing things like running a streaming show, so I haven't even been able to try and book yet.
Yeah. Others say, I agree. Sarah, my daughter who's 17, can't because we're in the middle of finding out if she has an immune disease. This from Tracy says, it breaks my heart. We're between a rock and a hard place. Filmmaker Mariah Braun's tuned in. What's up? It's good to hear from you. She says, I started off with 50,000 people ahead of me, and 2 hours later, I had my appointment booked for next Wednesday. Okay, so it sounds like demand's there. So maybe 16,000 booked appointments. There's probably a ton of people waiting to get in and be able to book, which is great. Ashley says, I logged on at 7:30 this morning. There were 25,000 people ahead of me. This is like the Stones are coming to town.
You betcha.
Right? You remember, were you ever the one that would like line up would you camp out ahead of time? Did you ever camp out to buy tickets for anything back in the day, in the olden days?
In the olden days, no.
Sam, did you ever camp out?
No, the closest I've ever come is like I remember being in high school and like I could drive and I had a debit card, but I didn't have a credit card. So I would have to go to like a mall Ticketmaster kiosk and buy my tickets in person if there was a show coming up. So like that's the closest I've ever really come to that.
It was always really exciting. It was really exciting when you got there though, right? And then they printed them off right at the time and they come off the printer and you'd have your tickets. It was like,
I mean, okay, physical tickets are probably unnecessary nowadays, but I love the fact that I have like a drawer full of all the tickets from every show I've ever been to.
Absolutely. I've been to a couple concerts where they rip the ticket stub in half and you're like,
I know.
No.
I think you know what I'm going to do? I am going to call out my friend Vince by name because whenever he would buy tickets for the two of us to go to something, he'd fold them in half and put them in his wallet. And then I'd get to the show and he'd hand me my ticket and be like, you've already ruined it.
Fair enough. No respect.
I only have one ticket. But it's from the very first concert I ever went to. And it was like, I still have it. And I have it with the cassette tape that they gave out free at the concert.
A free tape? Is a single or a full length?
A single.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, are you going to tell us who it is?
I feel like, well, now I have to.
Yeah.
Ani DeFranco.
Oh, cool. That's a great. What do you
at just this little tiny theater on the U of A campus. I was in grade 7.
Ooh.
And it was just like, it was incredible. Andy Stachansky was the name of the guy that opened, and that was the tape that I got. But the actual ticket is Ani DeFranco.
My very first concert, not including religious music, because that's a little bit different. The band would come to the church. I don't really count that as my first concert. My first concert, Roxette.
Get out of town!
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. World tour, Roxette, Calgary Saddledome, Stampede Saddledome, or whatever it was called at the time. Maybe it was the Canadian Airlines Saddledome. No, it's probably the Olympic Saddledome at the time. Would have been the Olympic Saddledome. Yeah, Roxette. On the floor. Me and my buddy Jamie Baker. Oh, yeah. Big deal.
I love first and last name.
Oh, yeah. Big
Jamie
deal.
Baker.
I haven't seen Jamie Baker in 30 years. I'd love to see that guy.
Do you know yours, Sam?
My first concert?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that. My first big name concert. I mean, like there's probably like some little sort of like, locals and some like other stuff before them. But I remember my first big name concert was Santana. And it was totally by fluke. I went as a teenager to babysit my cousin so my aunt and uncle could go to the show. My aunt wasn't feeling well, so she gave me her ticket. Oh. And that was a lot of fun. That was really
He's
cool.
unreal in concert.
Oh, my God, yes.
Carlos Santana?
Yeah.
Speaking of CDs and vinyl and tapes, you want to know one of the worst things that ever happened to me in my life? It's not true at all. I'm totally exaggerating. I'm driving. Doesn't matter that it was a white Jeep Cherokee 4x4 Sport. It just happens. I'd like to provide some context here. Stick shift, which was awesome. I miss driving a stick shift.
I drive a stick every day. I love it.
I miss it.
Me too.
Like learning how to power shift and just hammer that clutch and, anyway. And I pulled the Carlos Santana CD. I was coming out of the CD player and I put my finger into, and I had the CD in my hand, and then I had to downshift. And I did it with the hand holding the Carlos Santana CD and cracked the CD in half. No! Woo! And to this day, every time I think of Carlos Santana. I think of the Cracked. I think of the Cracked CD. Chris camped out in '94 to get front row tickets for the Black Crowes. That's amazing.
Whoa.
Okay, Taylor Smith deserves a shout out, first name, last name, on our live chat for doing the quick math, which you'll never get from me. Taylor says 16,000 bookings in 40 minutes means 576,000 bookings in 24 hours. So that's pretty quick. Says means almost all of Alberta could be booked in 7 days. That from Taylor Smith.
Did you see this one from Trevor? His first concert were the Smalls at the Eastwood Community Hall in 1992. The Smalls were Corb Lund's original when he was the drummer.
Corb was I think he played bass for the Smalls, right? Yeah, but no, it's okay.
Oh, you're right.
Because look what I did. I was literally just gonna, right before you started. We had Corb on like 2 weeks ago, and I'm such an idiot. I've seen Corb play lots. Love Corb Lund. When he's on the show, I always pretend like it's kind of not a big deal, but I'm like, oh my God, Corb
You're
Lund.
fangirling like crazy.
It would be like having Dave Matthews on the show for you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And anyway, so I was like, and so he's about to play. People that watch, you real talkers, you know what happened here. Corb let me down so graciously. We didn't let me down. He lifted me up. But I said, I go, and here he is, live on Real Talk, and I'm picturing him because I have vivid memory at Mac Hall, University of Calgary, old school, like back when Feist was playing, like as in Placebo, Herf Band, and I mean all these people that went on, like the Watchmen, like so many Watchmen shows, amazing concerts in that era, like early '90s, and I vividly remember watching Corb play, and he's in front of a microphone, right? So here we are, like 25 years later, and he's on the fast forward 20 years later, and I'm like, and here he is, live on Real Talk. The first time I saw him, lead singer of the Smalls, Corb Lund, and he's like. Actually, I wasn't the lead singer of the Smalls. I was the bass player. And I'm like, oh yeah, but I mean, but you had like a microphone in front of me. We were like, and he's like, yeah. Anyway, and he's like, this is one that I wrote for the. And we kind of went in, and I just was like, oh man.
Well, maybe it's just because he's so epic that I thought that he was his drummer.
It's like,
you thought that he was the lead.
We blew it.
And it's like, he's like a legend that he can do anything.
We blew it.
Okay, we blew it.
Yeah. So anyway, but we've got a lot of Smalls fans on the live chat right now that are checking in. I wanted to show you this before we sign off for the day, because you have to see this. This is hilarious. So you mentioned that the game last night between the Washington Capitals and the New York Rangers, this is the retribution. They're all choked that Artemi Panarin, the Rangers superstar, is out. And Tom Wilson's not paid a fine for manhandling him and whatever. So anyway, so this is hilarious. First of all, the video. This is opening face-off last night, and I know not everyone's going to love this, but here you are. This is what we call a good old-fashioned line brawl. Everybody, pick your dance partner and let's go. Although you see the defensemen, the Caps and Rangers D-men are like, I think we're just going to let the forwards fight this one out, or maybe we'll go. Everyone's expecting this, but I thought the Daily Show tweeting it out hilarious. Twitter at 7:10 a.m. That's like Real Talk at 8:30 Mountain, and here we go. So that was last night's show. But this tees up nicely an email that I wanted to read. This from Angry Adam, who chimed in. We've been talking about fighting in hockey. If you're wondering the background, none of us remember. No, but in all seriousness, a conversation about domestic violence actually is how this started, and a great roundtable conversation earlier this week. You can find it on our YouTube channel. You can download the podcast. And we started talking about things like how do you raise kids, and in particular, boys into young men, and what's some of the cultural messaging and the influences, and how does sport play into it. And there's no definitive answer here. We promise to keep exploring it. And if you can't stand what you're about to hear, I encourage you to take some time to write a rebuttal, and we'll provide a platform and time for those as well to talk at ryanjesperson.com. This is a thoughtful email. It's a good one from Angry Adam, who says, to the Real Talk fam. I love when people use words like family and community, and to my fellow Real Talkers. It just evidences what you have helped us create here. Adam says, the conversation that's emerged out of the fighting in hockey point of contention is an important one. And I think that it was appropriate that the topic of toxic masculinity that had been recently brought up on the show may have sparked this discussion. I think that your guests on the panel did an incredible job at extrapolating some of the underlying causes of domestic violence and its tendency to gravitate toward men as the offenders. The panel correctly identified early education as an important factor in developing some of the conditions that enable this circumstance that fosters and facilitates overly aggressive and violent tendencies of personality and behavior. He says, I feel it's very easy to misinterpret perceptions of the term violence and the term aggression, generally culminating into false pretense that perceive both terms as inherently evil or impermissible. While they are both the source of a tremendous amount of unnecessary struggle and suffering, I feel it's necessary to dissect how aggression is taught in early education, how an incomplete understanding of aggression can reproduce its harmful qualities, and how an incomplete understanding of aggression limits its capacity to actually be a beautiful concept of justice. He says, I brought up the question of why is it that boys and girls are separated in sports at a young age. Says biological differences in gender can really only be witnessed at the upper echelons of sport. I know many women who could beat me up, says Adam. It's not because I'm weak. It has nothing to do with my manhood. It's because I've never trained in MMA, for example. Many women have. Doesn't make them manly either. It's just talented. My biological gender traits do not have anything to do with it. If I was an elite MMA athlete, my biological gender traits may have more impact in comparison to an elite female MMA athlete, but obviously we're talking about athletes that represent a minuscule portion of the population. He says, I was able to reach a fairly high level of competition in hockey. I even trained with pro players. He says, Haley Wickenheiser is a far better player than I am not even close to comparison. Not even close. He says, but the reason why there's not as many Wickenheisers in pro hockey is not because they don't have the ability, but rather the social construct of our world. It generally does not give women the same opportunities to develop some of the qualities that they would need to compete at high levels, while breaking through to the NHL level may be more difficult. Perhaps there are biological differences that may be larger factors. They only become apparent again in that upper echelon. He says combining genders at a young age in sport may have an incredible impact, not just on the number of women competing at high-level sports, but also socially. Perhaps we would become more focused on competition as opposed to dominance. It may also be a meaningful way to address the debate around transgender athletes in sport. He says for the majority of male hockey players, beer leagues, let's be honest, going to be one of the highest aspiration you might achieve. A small portion will play junior, an even smaller portion will reach any level of pro. He says it's been demonstrated that reaching the highest levels of that continuum is possible for women. Haley Wickenheiser is a classic example. Separation of gender in sport at an early age only serves to reproduce elements of entitlement and dominance that can have a detrimental outcome with regards to the social development of young men and perhaps even passivity in young women, the focus on other skills argument that many young women are told. He says the real task is to teach both empathy and aggression equally to both genders at a young age. The purpose of this to develop an ability to possess both characteristics of empathy and aggression and critically assess which is needed given any given circumstance. An overly aggressive person is unable to apply empathy, and an overly empathetic person will be unable to express aggression. A person who demonstrates balance in this capacity will understand when either is necessary. He closes by saying fighting in hockey does, to a certain extent, express this sentiment. It requires an ability of judgment to display aggression when necessary. He says, for example, a player may receive a 4-minute major penalty for boarding, but the play itself may have been a malicious attempt to injure an opposing player. Perhaps that 4-minute penalty not enough of a deterrent when it comes to future action. As in society, the capacity to judge whether aggression is needed in certain circumstances comes from a capacity to understand empathy. Alternatively, it works in both regards, and it's worth a thought. That from Angry Adam. Argue with him, disagree with him, agree with him. Thoughtful. Brought something really interesting to the table. I love exploring the idea of, and I know that this happens in some, like, for example, youth soccer. It happens in some levels, not maybe at the club level. Basketball. So you see boys and girls playing together, and it was a really interesting angle.
When I was a kid, there wasn't a girls' soccer team. So I was on the boys' soccer team, and I loved it, and I kicked their asses. And it was, I don't know, to me, I enjoyed playing soccer with my fellow teammates when it was an all-female team, but I feel like those were really formative years when I was a little kid playing on the Belmac soccer team. I in and amongst the boys, and I was just the same.
Yeah.
I was on par with them. Maybe I'm delusional, but I think I was good. And it really, you know, empowered me, and I was able to go on to varsity. So
there you go.
yeah.
I just, to me, I love that this is not, we're not trying to curate or cultivate this community where everybody's always going to agree on everything. Where, you know, people say, well, it goes without saying. Well, I don't know. Does it?
Yeah.
I mean, I like that.
Me too.
This after I've just said that I have no room for debate on things like whether or not COVID is real, but we draw certain lines and
I think
don't
that's
apologize.
a pretty okay thing to just plant a flag on.
But I do want to have conversations about things where my initial response is like, wow, come on, and then go, no, actually, right? And this audience is really, really great. I think at reiterating that, like, we get so many different, I mean, people firsthand experience, right? I mean, Lisa says my daughter played full contact football with the boys, you know, even into high school, right? Tracy says we didn't have enough young people growing up in a small town. You had to play together. You know, I mean, Jillian says, here's my reply to the idea of putting boys and girls together in sport. Remind me of why boys and girls were put together in schools to make boys better people. So what's in it for the girls? Interesting. Not my question to answer.
Oh boy, can we do a whole episode on that?
We should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about because it's happening in the States, because they're looking at legislation and policy around transgender folks being involved in sport and where can they play. So I think that this is a huge conversation.
Yeah. Lala Zaz says, you know, you teach your little boys to use their words, right? And then you go along about how great it is that Cassian fights Kachuk. It's a Battle of Alberta reference. While the little guy's watching the game with you. Mixed messages. Yeah. I mean, but it's like I said yesterday, and I don't know that I necessarily have the words. I wouldn't want this to be transcribed as a thesis for a PhD. But I do think we also, and I understand that this may have more holes in it, this argument, than Swiss cheese, and that's fine. I don't have to be right all the time. See, I saved these comments for like 2.5 hours into the show. But in all seriousness, I do think we need to also establish that real life, that pro sports and the pro sports arena is not real life. It is real life in a way. In other words, racial slurs uttered on the ice, that's real life, right? Homophobic slurs uttered on or off the ice, both real life. But the role that a hockey player may play in the dynamic of pro sport and the culture of hockey and the way that it works and the way that players have been kept safe. And if you talk to people that actually play, which is so important, you know, we talk about lived experience. You have to talk to people with lived experience. You have to talk to athletes in the sport about this, right? It's not the same. I understand the point that Lala Zaz makes, and it's a good one in that it gets us talking about, you tell your young son to use his words, to not just sock somebody on the playground, while at the same time you cheer when Zach Cassian does it to Matthew Tkachuk. But I don't think you can go apples and apples on that one. I don't think you can. It doesn't, we'll just keep having this, we'll keep stretching this conversation over the next month.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, the idea of, well, let's talk to some athletes.
Yeah.
Who would go on the record?
Well,
so then the wheels start turning for me. Like, who can we talk to about this that can speak about the lived experience?
You were learning more about. I don't know why I'm thinking of Junior Seau right now. It's just a tragic story, but you know, you hear of athletes that now. I mean, often it's boxers. It's hockey players. I mean, there's been some tragic deaths. Derek Bugard, Wade Belak, Rick Rippon. I mean, the hockey community has lost so many. And football players, the NFL. I mean, Junior Seau was a legend.
Can you?
So Junior Seau, so he took his life. He died by suicide, but did it in a way that would preserve his brain for study.
Right.
And it's tragic. It's tragic. At the same time, that says something. Where he knew, like, I can't speak for Junior Seau, obviously, but it would imply to me that he knew that his brain needs to be studied to explain, ultimately, why he died, right? And I just think, so yes, a good friend of mine from childhood used to coach me in basketball, Marty Mrazek. He's now Dr. Martin Mrazek at the University of Alberta. I interviewed him once on TV. I was like, so Marty, and then I'm like, I should probably call him Dr. Mrazek.
You gotta lower your voice.
But he's applied out of the University of Alberta. He's applied his gift and his intuitive nature of his research is focusing on this. And he's one of many researchers around the world. So, we'll continue to have this conversation. I love it. I mean, it's almost a shame that we're wrapping up the show because we have so many amazing comments coming in the live chat right now. Emma says, I think it'd be just absolutely dope to get Andrew Ference on the show. He has been on the show. He's in touch with us. As a matter of fact, Andrew sent me a message a while ago that said, if a guest ever drops out last minute, I want to be first on your list. And I thought, I'm just going to start lying to Andrew and telling him the guests have... You'll never believe it, but we've got another guest has dropped out. He's going to go, what do you guys just... get into the beer fridge all afternoon? You ever try to actually book a show? Am I coming back again? We've got a great show in store tomorrow, as mentioned, Digital Wellness Day, and that's going to be the theme of our Friday roundtable, which is coming up, and I'm very much looking forward to that. What does digital wellness actually looks like? What does it actually look like? Plus, we're going to check in with the team Doctors Without Borders, another angle on the crisis in India. Plus, more time for your emails, and we'll get into our most recent question of the week. A reminder, we'd love for you to fill out the new one, this week's edition at ryanjesperson.com. Make it an amazing day. We'll talk to you soon.